Well, Squad is officially being review bombed, and it only took a few hours after V6.0 and the Infantry Combat overhaul to release for the Steam reviews to tick over to mixed, which is in stark contrast to the very positive the game has had for quite some time now. Now, to be fair, although the current reviews are on the negative side, it is only a bit over 1,600 reviews in total at the time I'm recording this. And if you load up the game and take a look at the main server browser, without even scrolling down, we can see full servers with nearly 2,000 people playing. My servers alone, the potato fields, even have about 400 people in them at any given time playing the game as well. So yeah, Squad is being review bombed, but do take the scale of these negative reviews into consideration. There's a small group of very upset people making it known that they're not happy. But even after I say all that, it may surprise you to hear that I actually agree with quite a few of these negative reviews. Not all of them, and I don't believe that their complaints warrant the overreaction we're seeing, and I don't think it is worth not recommending the game over them. But simply dismissing all of these negative comments as cope or skill issue or calling people Call of Duty fanboys isn't quite fair either. In this video, I'm going to take a look at a bunch of these reviews and try and help give some context. We're going to find out what is really a problem and what may in fact just be a case of someone needing to simply understand the new mechanics and break some bad habits or skill issues that are now being punished with this new update. At the end of the video, I'm also going to showcase 3 separate firefights I've had in the game since the update dropped, and I hope that will help prove why, despite some of these problems that people may have, the overall direction Squad is going and the vast majority of these changes are good for the game. With all this in context, it may be a bit easier to tell who has a valid complaint and who is simply not adjusting, and it may also help you try and slow your own pacing down while in game, since it really is much more enjoyable when you do. With that being said, let's start it off with Ty. Ty has 277 hours on record and says, "Change the sway. New update is not worth my time to play. I'm prone laid up with an MG bipod and all, and somehow the sway is still moving around like I'm 4 bottles of Jack Daniels down." This is something I actually completely agree with. If you watch any of my ICO videos over the past 3 months, I have been pretty vocal about praising the devs when I think they've done well, but also calling them out when things don't feel good at all. And the MG aim punch has been a constant pain point for me. The new suppression effects cause your character to flinch, and in general, I don't think that's a bad thing at all, but while prone, bipoded, and holding your weapon in an extremely stable firing position, it just doesn't really make much sense to be flailing around like you're in a Mach 5 wind tunnel. As you can see here, I'm bipoded on top of the hill and an enemy machine gunner starts firing at me right as I see him. His first burst misses but causes my character to flinch around, making it nearly impossible to see my target. You already get a lot of screen shake when firing MGs now, so this flinching plus the recoil affecting the new picture-in-picture optics results in both of us actually missing each other, and you can simply see him crawl back to the other side of the hill. Nobody kills anybody here, and that just kinda sucks. This is too much, and it has been my biggest complaint with machine guns with the ICO. Now, I know the devs want to prevent players having 100-round lasers that can delete people on the other side of the map, but when you're bipoded and when you're proned, you should really have some significant resistance to this aim punch. It shouldn't be gone, but maybe not nearly as exaggerated. I think just tweaking this will make a lot of these complaints go away, since it is completely valid and at times can look ridiculous. Now, next up is Micro Meat Man with over 5,600 hours in game. He says, "The game used to be a lot of fun. Sadly, the ICO removed any form of skill in the game. Now it's just a joke. In a few months, there won't be any SLs with higher than a room temperature IQ. Don't even waste your time or money." Now, I'm going to say something that may be controversial here, and that is the more time a user has in game, the more likely they're going to think that this update is a no skill update. This is because the devs have stated themselves that the gameplay of suppression will help newer players, or maybe those who aren't the best shots, to feel like they matter, and that's true. Not everyone is going to be good at the game, and now suppression is a valuable tool, which, whether you like it or not, is a real thing used in the real world. Put a lot of rounds down range, and you will keep the enemy's heads down. It's effective, and with this new update, Squad made it even more effective. But a common theme I see is that longtime players are now getting killed in ways that they wouldn't have been before the update. Previously, you could sprint out of cover, you could QE lean spam and headshot players hiding behind that cover, and it allowed very good FPS users to take advantage of the very basic gunplay, and it removed a bit of the immersion that you were really playing on a pseudo-realistic battlefield. Squad has never tried to be a milsim like Arma, but the devs have tried to make the gameplay feel extremely real and immersive. A soldier sprinting at you 360 no-scoping in the middle of a poppy field just really doesn't fit that. Now, I would argue that the ICO has actually increased the skill ceiling for players since the gunplay is actually a little harder. It now requires patience, map knowledge, and weapon familiarity for both your weapons and the enemy's weapons. You have to know what you're capable of and what they are capable of, and then put yourselves in situations where you will be more successful. There are now elements in game that will make it harder to shoot at times, but on average, the better players should always come out on top if they're managing their stamina properly and not simply sprinting across the map. Next up, we have Bunky here, who has over 4,100 hours in game. Bad new update because they listened to the Reddit dorks instead of the general population. Now, this is a sentiment I've seen a lot, and it's the idea that OWI is doing this to attract some type of milsimmer that only exists on Reddit, or maybe they're tailoring this update for older gamer dads that just can't shoot. As someone who has over 4,000 hours in game, Bunky should be very familiar with the squad Discord, and he should know that every update was posted there with a changelog, as well as including multiple channels to not only discuss the playtest, but also links to Google Forms after the playtest for people to submit feedback. This update was not something the devs did to listen to the general population, and I would actually argue that those that they did listen to, who were part of the Discord and spent the extra time to download a separate playtest client on Steam, are actually not part of the general population at all. They are actually a better representation of the much more involved and caring about the game squad players who play the game on average more than the regular person. These are like squad power users, and after 3 months, once again, Squad had 8 different playtests for the ICO. OWI listened to these squad power users, adjusted the playtest, and then released with what we have today. This isn't a general population update. This is a I've listened to the community for 3 months update. Here you go. Now, next up, we have Detective John Munch, who has over 1,000 hours played. Shooting in this game is like giving your Vietnam veteran grandfather with Parkinson's an M16 again and telling him there are Viet Cong in the trees. Now, as much of a joke as this review is, I think there is a little bit of truth in it. First off, weapon sway and handling in general is much different in V6.0. You have 2 separate things to manage now, the first being your stamina and the second being your stability. Stamina is the obvious one, and if you are low stamina, you will not be able to hold your weapon straight. This is obviously not realistic. Nobody is sprinting around and then shouldering their rifle with noodle arms. I've seen plenty of people show examples of training range live fire exercises where you sprint from cover to cover and you can obviously accurately hit your targets. And then you also have active duty or prior service people saying that it's not that difficult in controlled bursts to sprint from cover to cover and fire accurately. Squad isn't trying to be realistic here, and instead they are trying to prevent people from sprinting all over the map. They are using an unrealistic mechanic to force a type of gameplay. If you keep your stamina around half, so you're sprinting, walking, gaining your stamina, sprinting, walking again, you can actually ADS and fire relatively accurately. The best range to shoot for is actually around 75% or more stamina, and then you shouldn't really have much of an issue with hitting your shots. But I've seen so many clips of people who have absolutely 0 stamina, not hitting the broadside of a barn, and then complaining that the game sucks. No, you just haven't adapted to the game trying to force players to slow down their sprinting and also now encouraging them to use vehicles for transport. This slower movement speed and increased sway with low stamina is a tool to not only prevent these Shift W gamers, but also get players from making it into a walking sim and instead forcing them to mount up, go with vehicles, dismount, and engage the enemy, which honestly results in much better gameplay. Now, I will say, however, that there is a grain of truth with this review, and that is with regards to the stability and more specifically stability with iron sights. If your weapon is not stable, which you can see at the bottom of your screen here with these 2 white dots, you can't actually look through the rear sights when you're using iron sights. This animation forces you into aiming over your sights, and it's really just painfully slow to bring your view through the rear sight. This is a huge pain for me, and it just really feels bad. It's hard to shoot, it's hard to see, and it feels clunky. And I've complained about this for a couple months now. The devs did try an experimental option with the AK-12 where you had a sight over bore type thing, but personally, I would actually like to see that make a comeback as a select fire option for iron sight users. You can choose to ADS or toggle this on and do the sight over bore. This is valid, but once again, as annoying as it is, I don't think it's a deal breaker. Now, for the last review, we're going to go over this one by Lethal, who has over 2,300 hours in game, and I want to focus on the top paragraph here. OWI was more interested in adding new, useless content instead of fixing problems. Now they tried to fix a skill issue problem by completely revamping the game. Once again, notice the skill issue comment with someone with over 2,000 hours in game. Yep. Gunfights are now completely random nowadays. Vics are overpowered, AT doesn't work as you can't hit with being suppressed, and you're suppressed all the time when a Vic is close. All right, so we're just focusing on top paragraph here since the rest of it kind of echoes what we've already read. But I want to disagree a little bit and state that AT still does work. It is harder to use, it's a bit slower to set up, but you can still effectively disable and kill armor. I have done it, but honestly only after I adjusted my playstyle since I was so used to quickly shouldering my AT and then taking a shot immediately. Once I started being a bit more deliberate with my setup and then waiting crouched ahead of time, I found much more success, and when you do that, you will also see the results. Yeah, it's not as quick, but honestly we're talking about like 2 to 3 seconds of a difference. However, the vehicle balance is something to be concerned about. Vehicles now are incredibly powerful with regards to suppression, and by suppressing entire areas, you can not only lock down the infantry, but you can also push them and get into ranges where they can't kill you. Personally, I would be happy to see vehicles have increased ticket costs to help offset this, as well as even reduce the minimum arming distance for some launchers. 30 meters now is very difficult, especially because of how aggressive vehicle crews are playing now, and even reducing it by 10 meters would help AT immensely. So, out of all of these negative reviews, these are the most common themes I've seen. We have repeating complaints about weapon sway, MG aim punch, skill issues, and vehicle balance. And although I can obviously understand a couple of these points, I do think that they're overreacting in terms of calling squad a dead game or killing off the player base. There are things that, even if it weren't fixed, I can still live with because of what the gameplay is now when you get into firefights. And I'm going to show you exactly why. First is a firefight here in Scorpo, and as lat, I have my RPG out since I'm expecting contact. I'm running around and with half stamina, but as soon as I see the enemy Logi moving up, instead of running towards the Logi, which I may have done in the old squad, I instead stay put and I wait for the vehicle to get better in view for where I'm at now, allowing my stamina to regen and the RPG to be a bit more stable. After firing, I swapped to my AK and tried taking a few shots, which honestly I should have just used my frag round, but that's besides the point. This turns into a pretty long firefight because our hat player was also sprinting around behind me and he couldn't quickly shoulder his RPG-28 and insta-kill the Logi with the tandem round. Because he had to get into position and then wait for his stamina, it allowed for the enemy squad to dismount, which extended the length of the firefight and even allowed their Bradley to come support them. Yes, we didn't get that huge dopamine rush of the massive squad wipe immediately, but this actually resulted into a much better experience for both sides. Russians had a successful ambush and an intense firefight that we came out and won, but the Americans were ambushed and were given a chance to defend themselves and fight back. It's a much more entertaining game for both sides when you extend the firefights and offer positive gameplay, even if you're not as quick and deadly as you were in the past. Then we have this firefight on Narva, which had two evenly matched sides slam into each other in a village. It turned into house fighting where a couple of us managed to work ourselves into a building and lock it down, allowing friendlies to start to reinforce behind us and maintain the attack. We were eventually killed and pushed out, but this village fight continued for about 15 minutes. And a few of us actually began working together in fireteam size elements, clearing out buildings, holding intersections, and slowly bounding forward. This was slower paced in the sense that we weren't physically moving as much as in past squad games, but it was high intensity and extremely fun. Much more fun of a firefight than I've had in the past. Over the course of the battle, the Americans would push us out, but we would push back in, we got kicked out one more time, and then we eventually took over the FOB, which felt so fun and so rewarding, especially since it allowed us a perfect position to attack the next point. But a lot of other complaints are that you always need to play with the team and that solo play in squad is dead, but you don't need to have a whole team to lay down suppression and work in fire teams to have fun in the new squad. You can still be successful as a solo player if you are aggressive and use these changes to your advantage. Here I'm in Fallujah and I'm playing with the PPSH as insurgents against the Americans. I choose to run across an open field, which is really a bad idea, and I see someone pushing the fence ahead of me. After suppressing for a burst, I toss a grenade to keep up the suppression, and then I continue trying to push up, eventually closing the gap and killing the enemy player who was forced to keep his head down and then crawled to the outside to try and peek me. I linked up with a teammate and we then began a shootout with a few enemy in an alleyway, and although I do eventually take one out, a second enemy flanked around, took advantage of some vaulting to get to the high ground, and I get killed. This is still fast-paced, this is still aggressive squad play, and this is aggressive from both sides. Someone taking advantage of high ground, which players have said the movement is slow, but hey, you can still do it if you think about map design and what you can actually get to if you're infantry. Anybody who says that they can't do this anymore simply needs to adjust, because it's all right there for you. These are just a few examples, and I'm sure I'm missing some amazing things people have experienced in game because of the updates. But this isn't even cherry picking. I even had another awesome game on Core which had just as many fun team and solo moments, making it 4 straight back-to-back games where gunplay was fun, and the annoying issues that people are review bombing for were minimal to not even worth worrying about. I'm not saying the ICO is perfect, and personally there are a few things I would like tweaked, but these firefights would have never happened in the old squad. We would have one-shot deleted the Logi we ambushed, one side would have quickly headshot and killed the other side in Narva, and I would have been dead in that field in Fallujah. It's not wrong to listen to some negative feedback, but please take it with a grain of salt and really try to just adjust your playing style. The first few games I played were rough and a huge learning curve, but after an hour or two I can confidently say that this is the most fun I've had in squad in a very long time, and I think it will lay a great foundation for other updates in the future, hopefully which include game mode updates and other fun and exciting maps and factions. But what do you guys think? Am I a shill for OWI? Are the review bombers speaking facts? Or does everyone just need to take a beat, chill out, and learn to play this new version of Squad? Let me know in the comments down below, and if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. And don't forget to come check out the live streams over at twitch.tv/MoiDawg, where I stream throughout the week. But that's it for me. Until next time, peace.